David Simon's The Wire is a televised masterpiece. This year will be the 20th anniversary since it first started airing back in 2002, and the show is still as relevant as ever due to its gritty and realistic portrayal of the city Baltimore and its numerous institutions. Each season of The Wire not only continues the story, but also adds another layer of context which further helps to analyze the institutions at play. The first season of The Wire introduces us to the problem of the ineffectiveness of the war on drugs, and the following seasons help to show why this so-called war is not being solved by means of economics, politics, education, and the media. The first season, which will be the main focus of this video, introduces us to two major themes in the show. One of these is the concept of the game, which is constantly mentioned through dialogue. The other theme is a bit more subtle as it is never directly mentioned through dialogue, but extremely noticeable if you pay close attention: the similarities and parallels between the different institutions. For example, on paper you would think that a police department and a major drug gang are extremely dissimilar, and in a way you would be right as they have totally different goals. However, if you take a look at these institutions and the people within them, you would notice that they operate in very similar ways. In the first part of this video, I'll be discussing the game.
It's all in the game.
Right, but when you ace a witness,
A working man?
who ain't even in the game.
The game is rigged.
Yeah, but the game ain't gotta be played like that, yo.
It's all part of the game, right?
Personally, I don't think the game is played like that.
What you think they was gonna do, huh? Shit, all that shit is in the game, man. You know that.
We look like you, Omar. Out here on our own, playing the game for ourselves.
The game already cost you, right? But the game is out there, and it's either play or get played.
This game, this thing with my uncle, might not be right for me, I'm thinking.
It's all in the game, Buff.
There's a lot of players there, a lot of game being played.
You wanted to be in the game, right? Now you're in the game.
That's the game, yo.
I ain't ready, and I ain't never gonna be ready for this game.
D. This right here is part of the game, D.
You do not play the game for yourself, you play it for us.
All in the game, yo. All in the game.
The concept of the game and the thesis for the rest of the show is introduced in the very first scene of the series, in which McNulty is having a conversation with a witness to a shooting.
I gotta ask you, if every time Snot Boogie would grab the money and run away, why'd you even let him in the game?
What?
When Snot Boogie always stole the money, why'd you let him play?
Got to. This America, man.
This is America. Anyone who wishes to participate in the game can do so. The question is, what really is the game? On a surface level, the game can be interpreted in different ways depending on which group of people you apply it to. For instance, for the Avon Barksdale organization, the game is a means to survive and find success in America.
This right here is part of the game, D. And without the game, this whole family would be down in the fucking terrace living off scraps.
Whereas for the police department, the game could either refer to the numbers game.
I've been fighting this bullshit for years. The only way to go is high-end enforcement. You pick the targets that'll make a dent out there. Reduce the violence.
So what's the problem?
Problem is I do what I'm told.
Meaning?
Mr. Mayor, I'm no more a racist than you are. Thing about affirmative action, I'm just talking policy here, no offense intended.
None taken.
It's a numbers game. And numbers games breed more numbers games. You need a 20% hike in the hiring of black officers to keep up with the city demographic. But that's also got to be reflected straight up the chain, which means fast-tracking some people past where they're, how do I say this? Their experience warrants. And he who owes his good fortune to the numbers abides in them. Got to show arrests are up 15, 20%. We'll worry about the quality later. So what you saw out there, it's a con game, a Band-Aid on cancer. So no, I'm not with this, but I do follow orders.
Or the drug game and the way they operate to try and catch the drug dealers.
Buy, bust.
Yes, sir.
No long surveillances, no Kell recorders, no DNRs. I want to get in and out as quickly as possible.
However, the game isn't just a game of cops and robbers, as the first scene explains. Anyone can play the game in America.
You are a parasite who leeches off
Just like you,
the culture of drugs. Excuse me? What?
I got the shotgun. You got the briefcase. It's on the game, though, right?
Drug addicts like Bubbles and Johnny are part of the game. Individualistic characters like Omar, who robs drug dealers for a living, are part of the game. Lawyers who help drug dealers when they're facing legal troubles are part of the game. And even politicians who receive drug money for their campaign fundraisers are part of the game. But at the end of all of this, what is the true goal of the game and what does it entail? I think this is best explained in one of my favorite scenes where D'Angelo Barksdale uses a chess game as an analogy to describe the game.
Now the king, he move one space any direction he damn choose, cause he's the king. Like this, all right? But he ain't got no hustle. But the rest of these motherfuckers on the team, they got his back. And they run so deep, he really ain't gotta do shit.
Like your uncle.
Yeah, like my uncle. And you see this? It's the queen. She smart, she fierce. She move any way she want, as far as she want. And she is the go get shit done piece.
Remind me of Stringer.
And this over here is the castle. It's like the stash. You move like this and like this.
Dog, stash don't move, man.
Come on, yo, think. How many times we moved the stash house this week? Right? And every time we move the stash, we gotta move a little muscle with it, right? To protect it.
True. You right. All right. What about them little bald-headed bitches right there?
All right, these right here, these are the pawns. They like the soldiers. They move like this, one space forward only, except when they fight. And it's like this. And they like the front lines. They be out in the field.
So how do you get to be the king?
It ain't like that. See, the king, stay the king, all right? Everything stay who he is, except for the pawns. Now, if a pawn made it all the way down to the other dude's side, he get to be queen. And like I said, the queen ain't no bitch. She got all the moves.
All right, so if I make it to the other end, I win.
If you catch the other dude's king and trap it, then you win.
All right, but if I make it to the end, I'm top dog.
Nah, yo, it ain't like that. Look, the pawns, man, in the game, they get capped quick. They be out the game early.
Unless they some smart-ass pawns.
This scene makes it clear that on a deeper level, the game is all about hierarchy. In the case of the Barksdale organization, you have the drug game, which focuses on maximizing profits and not snitching to the police when one gets caught. In the case of the police department, you have the numbers game, which focuses on arrests and convictions. And in the case of political offices, you have the political game, which focuses on gaining the public's favor and raising money for their campaign fundraisers. But what all of these institutions have in common is that they are all hierarchical. This is especially noticeable in the police department due to the constant mention of chain of command.
Chain of command, Detective. That's how we do things down this end of the hall. Chain of command might mean nothing to you, McNulty. You think the job is gonna save me? You think it's gonna save you? Chain of command, Detective. That's all I got from the deputy today.
Chain of command?
So what the game really is people trying to achieve their goals whilst overcoming the obstacles in their way. And in most cases, their goal is to get ahead in life by moving up the social ladder. However, moving up the social ladder within these institutions isn't easy, especially if you don't adhere to the rules set in place by these institutions. Each institution has their own set of rules that participants must adhere to.
What's the rule?
I know the rule.
Say it.
Don't talk in the car. Or on the phone or in any place that ain't ours, and don't say shit to anybody who ain't us. But it was just you, yo. It's your fucking truck. Don't talk in the car.
and if they violate these rules in any way, they'll be punished. Depending on the organization, these punishments will differ. For example, a policeman who violates the rules or doesn't put up the stats expected of them may end up being demoted to a unit where they don't want to be. However, in the case of drug dealers, if one of them violates a set of rules or wants out of the game, they will most likely be found up dead to prevent them from snitching. Both these organizations are similar in such a way that they punish those who do not conform. However, it's not just these two organizations that adhere to such a structure. In later seasons, the same could be said for unions, government, schools, and the media. All the participants of these institutions are facing a choice: conform or be punished. These rules are put in place to maintain the status quo and to protect the organization's existence. However, for some characters, conforming is not an option if they want to achieve their goals. The main culprit of this in Season 1 is Detective McNulty, as he constantly ignores chain of command and goes through back channels like Judge Phelan to do his bidding. More on this later though. Another part of the game is to be one step ahead of other players, much like in chess. Andrew Ferguson wrote, "People committed to criminal activity will learn how to outsmart additional police surveillance. If automobiles are monitored through ALPR, criminal actors will stop using their own cars. If cell phones are intercepted, criminal actors will use disposable cell phones. The cat and mouse game of cops and robbers will continue no matter the technology." And this is exactly what we see in the show as well. Avon's crew uses pagers, coded numbers, and payphones so they won't be caught as easily. Meanwhile, the deputy ops and the major wants the Avon Barksdale case to be wrapped up as quickly as possible through buy busts and dope on the table. However, McNulty's unit can't have this happen because they're trying to keep the wire alive, and if they did this, it would destroy the wire. When criminals suspect that they're being listened to, they will change the way they operate. This is exactly what we see happen.
No more pages. Touts, lookouts, off the air, all right? Nobody gonna use these cell phones except for you and Bodie. And y'all get some shit on these cell phones, you understand me? We got the numbers, we the only niggas that need them numbers. Not your moms, not your girl, nobody. You feel me?
I got no cell phones, no house phones neither, right?
Ah, man, nothing but these pages and them pay boxes over there. That's it.
Man, don't tell him. It's dead.
All right, tear them motherfuckers out.
What?
Tear out them phones. From now on, y'all need a pay phone, you walk a few blocks, and do not use the same phone more than once a day. You hear me?
Once Avon's crew suspects that there is a snitch or that the police is onto something, they decide to get rid of their pagers and destroy the payphones in the low-rises. This ends up killing the wire that they had set up and doesn't give them Avon. Ultimately, the police does end up catching Avon through a new wire, as they had installed a camera and microphone in the room where he conducts his business. Now that I feel like I've sufficiently explained the concept of the game, let's move on to part 2 of this video: the parallels and similarities between characters and institutions. One similarity between the police and the Barksdale organization is that they act a lot like a brotherhood. Both these institutions will do whatever it takes to protect their own, as long as they adhere to the rules. This can be seen in several instances where the drug lawyer Levy ends up helping those who are facing time in prison. And in the case of police, one great example of this is in episode 2, where officers Carver, Herc, and Prisbalewski get scolded by Lieutenant Daniels for going to the high-rises at 2 in the morning and committing acts of police brutality. He gives them time to get their story straight.
No, Officer Prisbalewski, he did not piss you off. He made you fear for your safety and that of your fellow officers. I'm guessing now, but maybe he was seen to pick up a bottle and menace officers Houck and Carver, both of whom had already sustained injury from flying projectiles. Rather than use deadly force in such a situation, maybe you elected to approach the youth, ordering him to drop the bottle. Maybe when he raised the bottle in a threatening manner, you used a kill light, not the handle of your service weapon to incapacitate the suspect. Go practice. You fuck the bullshit up when you talk to internal. I can't fix it. You're on your own.
Similarly, when one in the Brotherhood is attacked, they attack back and hit twice as hard. For instance, when the police is doing raids in the low-rises, Bodhi hits one of the officers in the face, which is quickly followed by a police beating. The ultimate example of this in Season 1 is when Kima Greggs gets shot while undercover. When this happens, everyone in the police comes together through solidarity. Multiple police units, the homicide unit, DEA, and other high-ranking officers come together offering resources to one another so they can ultimately arrest the ones responsible for nearly killing one of their own. This sentiment also applies to other characters. For example, when Johnny is nearly beat to death by the dealers in the low-rises, Bubbles decides that he wants to help the police in any way he can. Another example is Omar. After he and his crew rob one of Avon's stashes, Avon's crew hits back by putting a bounty on his and his crew's heads. His boyfriend Brandon ends up being murdered by Avon's crew, which results in Omar striking back hard. He robs multiple stashes, kills one of Avon's soldiers, Stinkum, and even makes an attempt on Avon's life. Not only that, but he also changes his mind on helping the police, willing to stand witness to a trial, doing just about anything he can to hurt Avon. Meanwhile, Avon gathers all mid-level players to spread the word about the bounty on Omar, but after the attempt on his life, he agrees with Stringer that a truce might be a better play. However, the Brotherhood or institution will not always protect you. In an article about America's police, Eve L. Ewing wrote, "The unforgivable sin within the Brotherhood is to cast aspersions against the only people whom the Brotherhood recognizes as human, its own kind. Shoot a boy in the back and you can still be in the Brotherhood. Side with the people who are asking questions, or raise a fist with them, or kneel before them, or talk to them, and you are out." And this sentiment doesn't just apply to the police, but also other institutions like Barksdale's organization. This leads me into the most obvious character parallel in Season 1. D'Angelo Barksdale and Jimmy McNulty. D'Angelo is a young drug dealer who grew up in the drug game, whereas McNulty is a seasoned homicide detective. Despite these major differences, their journey throughout Season 1 is quite similar. Both of them end up standing up to the institutions they're in. On the one hand, you have Jimmy McNulty, who isn't satisfied with the way the game is being played within the Baltimore Police Department. In Episode 1, we see him as a spectator to D'Angelo's trial, which he should have lost. Judge Phelan, who notices McNulty in court, asks him to come and talk to him, and as McNulty is upset about the case, he spills the truth about the Barksdale organization and says that the police isn't doing anything about it. Because of Phelan's position as a judge, he has influence over the police, and thus makes them start up a case against Barksdale. As a result, everyone is pissed off at McNulty for ignoring chain of command. This ends up being a recurring sequence of events where McNulty ends up going through Phelan for support as he feels like the police isn't taking the case seriously enough and essentially destroying it.
Who's your daddy now?
The deputy wants buy busts, dope on the table, and some mid-level arrests. This doesn't sit well with McNulty, which is why he chooses to ignore chain of command and finds other means to progress the case into catching those at the top of the food chain. At the end of all of it, they did end up cracking the case, arresting most of the priority targets like Avon, Weebay, Bird, and D'Angelo. But for McNulty, what did it cost? He had to go where he least wanted to go, the boat unit. On the other hand, we have D'Angelo Barksdale, who grew up in the game, but slowly realizes that he wants to be no part of the game. In Episode 1, he's introduced as a young drug dealer who just got off free of charge in a murder trial, even though he was guilty of killing someone in the high-rises. Since D'Angelo screwed up, his uncle Avon demotes him to the low-rises, where he tries to fix things up and gives advice to the younger drug dealers. As time goes on, D'Angelo begins to realize that this game isn't for him.
This game, this thing with my uncle, might not be right for me, I'm thinking.
The more unnecessary violence he sees, the more he realizes how screwed up the drug game really is. One of the young drug dealers he finds himself with is Wallace, a boy whose heart just isn't in the game, as he can't deal with the violence. D'Angelo advises him to get out of the game and go back to school. Meanwhile, Avon and Stringer are taking out anyone who might have a possibility of snitching. This includes Wallace. When they next meet D'Angelo, they ask him about Wallace, but D'Angelo assures them that Wallace is out of the game, essentially talking back to his superiors.
What's it to you? You ain't gotta worry about him.
Say what?
He's gone. He's out the game.
Out the game?
Yo, the man asked you a simple question.
Look, I don't mean y'all no disrespect. You know I don't. But I'm sitting here telling you that the boy is out the game. And even if he wasn't out the game, he wouldn't be no problem.
Later, D'Angelo gets arrested again. However, this time, he's ready to talk to the police after he finds out that Wallace is dead.
Oh, by the way, your boy Wallace, shot dead in the low-rises. That's how y'all take care of your own, right?
You a lying motherfucker. Look at me! Where the fuck is Wallace? Huh?
I can't.
I want what Wallace wanted. I want to start over. That's what I want.
He was born into the game, but he really just wanted to live a normal life. Eventually, his mother visits him in jail and convinces him to take the prison sentence, as snitching would destroy the whole family. However, due to his talking back and almost snitching, he wasn't trustworthy anymore, which ultimately led to his death in prison. Due to the decisions these characters have made, they have both landed themselves in spots where they'd rather not be. McNulty ends up in the boat since he wanted to go for the big players rather than play the numbers game, and D'Angelo ends up dead because his heart just wasn't in the game. These parallel characters show us that if you step out of line and ignore chain of command, or don't play by the rules set by the institution, you'll be punished, either through demotion or something worse like death. Furthermore, these parallels also add a level of nuance to the show. It shows the viewer that it's not just a story about good guys and bad guys. Rather, every character has their own code, set of motivations, and flaws. What these parallel characters also show us is that you can't change the game. While institutions do change up the ways they operate, the game never really changes. The game remains hierarchical. If somebody dies or somebody gets demoted, there will always be another person who can just as easily replace them. This is exactly what Season 1 is also trying to tell us about the war on drugs. While you can take out mid-level or even high-level drug dealers, there will always be someone to take their spot. And as a result, the game remains unchanged.
Fighting the war on drugs, one brutality case at a time.
Girl, you can't even call this shit a war.
Why not?
Wars end.
The game remains the game. The only change is in its players. As Marla Daniels says,
The game is rigged, but you cannot lose if you do not play.